All right. But I think we'll record it because it's just so unusual that the numbers are low. We'll record it and then we can share it.
You know, something that I found when the invite went out, it didn't go out. At least I didn't receive one as an actual appointment to set on my calendar. And it just happened to occur to me, geez, I saw this email come through and I went back and searched for it. But it didn't come up as like a typical calendar appointment. And that might be part of the reason. I don't know.
Yeah.
I do know that, again, this is my first time doing this, and we searched high and low for the actual workforce email list to go out. And every time we sent it, like 3 or 4 would come back and say, no, they're not there. So it wouldn't narrow down who is still part of it and who is not. We can't find the actual email list that was originally sent by Patricia and then on to Caitlin. So I apologize to everyone for that. We're going to be working on that before the next one, but we sent it out during constant contact just because we know those names are on there. So
Yeah.
Again, I apologize.
So, and Kim's on vacation, so we
Oh,
were
how
limited
nice.
what we could do,
If
and
people would just leave her alone.
I feel her pain.
Morning, and there's like 10 or 12 emails from her, and she's down in the Caribbean, so I don't know how she's doing that.
Yeah. So for those of you who are first time here, this group was created, man, I don't know how many years ago now, 5 or 6 years ago. And we realized that there were so many people providing career services with all kinds of different hats on, right? We got adult ed, we've got voc rehab, we've got jobs for Maine grad. They're in Skills Inc. I mean, they're everywhere. In the first meeting we had, we actually went out and discovered something like 60 to 70 career service providers in the greater Waterville area. I mean, it's just astounding. And so we said, what do we want to do? And so what we came up with this model where there would be typically 2 career service providers that would have about 20 minutes with like 5 minutes of Q&A. And they would be able to talk about what services they provided. And then we also wanted to have businesses, what businesses are in the area and what are their needs. And so that's sort of been the model that we've had. And so voc rehab, you folks can kick this off today. And you have about 20-25 minutes. It's there's a little wiggle room here, but you can start off today. And it's just what we want to know is what kind of services are you providing that other career service providers may need to know about? And then we'll just move around. We'll just pass that wand around the room for our presenters. Okay?
Sure.
Awesome.
Sounds good. Well, hello again, everybody. Spencer Trenoweth, casework supervisor for voc rehab. I am stationed in our Augusta office, but Dick and Kylie are right here locally in the Waterville area. And that's why I wanted them to come with me today and make some of these excellent connections here. So I'll just give an overview of what is voc rehab, what are we all about, what do we stand for, and at any point in time, I hope you guys speak up and add to this. So who are we? Well, we're part of the Maine Department of Labor. And what we do is we serve folks really from the age of 14 all the way up through, endless working age. Folks with some type of disability or barrier to employment. And we help them achieve those employment goals out in the community. We're looking for long-term, integrated, competitive employment for the folks that we're working with. And so I'm glad to have Dick and Kylie here with me today because they represent really well the different layers of what we do at voc rehab. So we have in our office what we call transition counselors, and Kylie is a transition counselor. The idea behind a transition counselor is that they're working with really that population of 14 to sometimes up to 24. 24 is really the cutoff on that end of it. High school aged transition students with disabilities. So your 504, your IEP students. And Kylie is going into the high school setting and providing really, career counseling to a deeper degree to this area of students. So she's meeting with kids one-on-one and in a group setting and providing that, what is a job? What do I want to do when I grow up? Really taking that deeper dive into what is employment for me and what are my barriers to reaching that goal? And when we identify those barriers, we have state funding that is accessible to us to help overcome those barriers in whatever creative way we can. So in Kylie's situation, she could work with a freshman or sophomore in high school and counsel them all the way through that high school setting, through graduation. We stay through graduation all the way until that young person is working in a career that they're going to be happy with long term. And sometimes that can take 6, 7, 8 years if you think about the different pathways that are available to students. So all the way through high school, then let's say this young person wants to go on and do a 4-year college education to get to that big career goal. Kylie's going to stay right there that whole time. Help them out of high school into college, support through college, support into the workforce. So it's really neat what Kylie does in the transition world. And just so everybody knows, there is a transition counselor in every single public high school in the state of Maine. We are all across the state. So for folks that have areas outside of Waterville, I mean, just one way to find us is talk to the guidance office at any public high school. If you ask, can we talk to Voc Rehab? Who is Voc Rehab? They should know pretty immediately who they're connected to on our behalf and, get access to those students. Now, Dick is what we would call an adult counselor. And so when folks either age out of transition services, they hit that 24-year-old mark, they're no longer considered a youth with a disability. And they would transfer over to working with Dick for more adult-based services. Or anybody that applies that is just naturally over the age of 24 is going to get assigned to an adult counselor. And it's the same idea. Services look a little bit different. I would say, Kylie is doing a lot of that first experience, those soft skills, that what is a job? Where is my life going to go? And Dick working with the adult population might be a lot more re-entry, or a disability has impacted my ability to do a career I've done for however many years. I need to make a change, and what does that look like? And that's really where Dick would step in with those adult-based services. But it looks different for every client that we work with. And that's really an important thing to take away from this, is that our services are completely individualized based on what is the person's career goal and what do they need as an individual to get to that goal. And it looks different for every person that we work with. So what was that, like 5 minutes? All right. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about just the eligibility process to work with us. So anybody can apply for our services. Anybody can put in an application. The first thing that we're going to do is we're going to meet with that client and we're going to determine if they're eligible to move forward in that process with us. And like I mentioned, a key piece of that eligibility is somebody has to have a documented disability or barrier to natural employment. When I say a documented disability, it could be anything. It could be mental health, physical, anything at all. As long as it's documented, we can determine eligibility and move forward. So if somebody comes to us and their main barrier is related to vision, then they would get to work with what we call the Division for the Blind and Visually Impaired. And in that side of VR, there's counselors just like Dick and Kylie, but they're specialized in vision-related impairments. Maybe sometimes they have one themselves that they've needed to get services, and they understand the culture that goes with that side of things. And so if we have a client and that's their main barrier, we're going to refer them. It's in-house, but it's a different set of counselors to get that more specialized support. And same goes for deaf and hard of hearing. We have our own, it's still VR, but our own department within VR that works with specifically deaf and hard of hearing. So once we find a client eligible, we move forward to the planning process. So everything that we do is driven by an individualized plan for employment. This is where we would sit down with our client and we would figure out really just that whole picture of, are you looking for a new career pathway? Or do you need a job yesterday to get on your feet and make ends meet? What direction are we going here? And then break down, how do we get you through the door at said place? Do we need to overcome a transportation barrier, which is all too common with everybody that we work with? You know, maybe we need to work on some mental health stuff. Do we need to get case management involved? Do we need to work with med managers? You name it, right? What are the things holding this individual back from being successful in that job? How can we put them in place? How can we overcome those barriers to get there? Once we figured that whole process out, we would write it all into a plan for this client. They would be put into service status with us, and then we can tap into funding if needed once they're in service to help overcome some of these barriers. Through there, you know, we'll provide counseling and guidance, job coaching, job development for the folks that we work with. Then once they become employed, we stay for at least another 90 days beyond the date of hire and make sure that our client is able to become stable, become independent, really settle in nicely to that job. And we talk about the idea of successful closure if agreed to by the client. Some folks that we work with, it's just not going to happen to be stable within 90 days. They need extended, ongoing supports, you know, for the foreseeable future. And we can help make that bridge to what we call long-term supports for our clients, where another agency would step in and provide long-term job coaching beyond 90 days. So it's really just this whole continuation of what's the goal? What are the barriers? How do we overcome those? How do we help you stabilize and maintain this job of choice? So please add to that rambling. How about you guys?
One of the things I think that you guys would be particularly interested in is there's a whole variety of plans that are individualized, so it depends on what the goal is of the client. But one of the things that I think a lot of people don't think of is we have a lot of people, not a lot of people, we have a surprising number of people that want to become self-employed. So we do self-employment plans and help people to set up their own business, which is something that you guys would probably be particularly interested in hearing about. And, you know, there's several right here in Waterville recently that have either opened businesses, and one just closed recently that has done very well. So there's a whole variety of self-employment type supports that we can put in place too. And like I said, that's kind of something that you don't typically think of when you think of both rehab and typical job coaching. There's a lot of other stuff involved. Well, one of the first things is they have to fill out a couple of sort of questionnaires, or little tests. Of one being is, you know, is this really a good thing for me? Am I really suited to go into my own business? And then there's another one. The second one is they end up having to do a preliminary business plan, very simple, just kind of, this is what I want to do, this is what it's going to look like, who I want to serve, or who my client customers are going to be. And then before we can go ahead and spend money, we make a referral to the Small Business Development Corporation, and they get assigned a counselor, and that counselor works with them to produce an actual honest to God business plan that's gonna, you know, that they can follow to improve their chances for success. And we can't move forward unless we have an approved plan from the SBDC, which kind of protects both the client, because we don't want to set them up for failure going into something that, you know, as a lot of you know, probably the success rate of small businesses and startups is not good. And when you have a disability that you're working with, in addition to the other challenges, it can be even more of a danger. So we try to avoid that, and that's
hopefully, it's not always, doesn't work every time, but I think it proves his chances of success. So,
I think one of the highlights to the transition, program that we run is the short exposure opportunities for working for the students that I work with. We can do short trial work experience in several different areas and really give them that opportunity to research and do the job, informational interviews, which is like the reverse interview and or job tours, which really help, like, all I can think is the word exposure for these students that think they want to do this, but have really only what it looks like to them when they're inside the Humane Society looking at a cat. They don't get the nitty gritty of what the whole job, you only get the grocery store view of it when you're, grocery shopping. So if they only get that, the work-based learning experience, give them that exposure.
It's a huge,
It's a big deal.
attractant
Yeah,
to VR services, I would say, to Kylie's point. So let's say Kylie's in the school working with a student and all throughout the school year, they've picked Hannaford, common first place to begin. So will I go into the grocery store with mom and dad and I kind of get a sense of what's going on? It looks interesting. I'd like to try it. Well, we can go in as a representative, as counselors of that person, create a relationship with Hannaford, and we can talk to them about, give the student, if you guys are willing to work with us, give the student a chance to come in for a couple of weeks, try the job. Every aspect of the job as natural as possible. We, in the right situation, can cover the wages of that student if they provide the opportunity to learn the job. So it's really meeting the employer in the middle to give this person an opportunity to try it. Because what we find is, well, like everybody knows, a 16-year-old junior in high school is pretty hard these days to get that first job opportunity. You might spend half the summer looking for that first job, and then all of a sudden it's time to go back to school, and there goes the summer. Well, if we can meet these employers halfway and say, you guys give them the place to learn and try the job, we'll give them the paycheck. Pretty good success rate of getting these young folks in there, learning the job. And we like to kind of advertise it to these students as a living interview. So they're not committed to you yet. We're paying you to be there. So I want you to show up every day and treat this like it's a job interview. Put your best foot forward, make these connections. And if you do a good job, who is Hannaford likely to hire? The person that's been here for 4 weeks this summer, doing a good job, or a random name on an application. They're gonna hire you. They've seen you in action. They've seen all of the positivity that you have to bring. And a lot of folks get jobs that way through our help at the beginning. So it's another just unique way that we can use our funding for the right person to get their foot in the door. It's endless how individualized it is. So let's say we're working with an adult and their career dream has been to get their CDL license and drive truck. And we all know, we know CDL license these days is like $6,000 roughly to go take the course. Not a lot of folks have that laying around. If we feel like that person has skills, the abilities, the means to be successful in that career, then we can, first of all, look for comparable benefits. Are there any type of grant programs or whatever that can help with the cost first? And then if you still need some additional funding to get to that course, we can step in and use our funding, right? So I always try to be cautious. We're not just free for all with, oh, you want to go to a 4-year degree? Great, we have money, go. It's really, does it make sense? Is this a good fit for this individual? Are the capabilities there? What other resources can we investigate and find that have free money? Put all that forward, and then if you still need help, we'll step in with state funding and help the rest of the way, right? But it's really our job to find those comparable benefits, to find those opportunities for clients to tap into to get where they want to go.
So what is your like the ratio for how many clients do you typically have?
well, anywhere from 90 to 130.
Yeah, same with you.
Yeah, starting to ramp up because as school, school starts back up, we run a class within the school, so we have people signed up for that. So beginning of the school year gets pretty busy.
There's how many of you guys on our team in Augusta, say 16 or 17? Maybe that's even, I should know this, but let's say roughly 15 counselors housed out of the Augusta office that serve all of our local communities surrounding. The average is 100 to 110 per counselor, which may sound in human services, sounds like a really scary number when you say I have a caseload of 100. And it is a big number, there's no doubt about it, but the other piece of that is we might have, I'm just gonna throw it out there, maybe 30 or 40 of those folks are just looking for that little confidence booster of knowing they have a resource like Dick and Kylie to, hey, I have an interview today, I'm really nervous, can we talk it through? So yeah, and then we do have some really intensive cases too, right? It's give and take, but it's so different what everybody means that when you say we have 100 people, well, some folks are just call me and ease my angst about my job interview. Some really need that hand over hand, long process of help with us, and that's fine. But even though it's 100, everyone is so different.
Yeah. Oh, I was a school counselor with 500 students on my caseload, so 100 sounds pretty good, actually. Questions from anybody else? Follow
I have a question. So at Educare, KBCAP, we've worked with both rehab in the past, currently working with both transitional and adult. We've hired an adult from Voc Rehab, who remains one of our employees today, and are currently working with a recent graduate, which has been an amazing partnership. And I know that you said you have funding to provide, like you've provided a paycheck for certain people. Do you have funding that might support the need for childcare for an adult who is trying to enter the work field, but can't do that if you don't have childcare in place or at home? Would that be a support offered?
Yeah, I mean, it's something we've done before. Again, it's very situational, very individualized. I can give you like a hypothetical example would be, let's say, somebody comes to us, which is something we just talked about in the office the other day, and finding childcare is the only thing holding them back from the job opportunity. Well, maybe we come up with an agreement with that individual and we say, we will help you with a month or two, I'm just making this up, but a month or two of childcare for you to get a flow of income. And then we will, our push is to become independent. So then we'll fade out of that. And now that you have a paycheck or two in your pocket, you've gotten caught up with life, then we expect you to become individual and take over. But right, if that's the barrier, if that's what's holding somebody back and it makes sense to us, then, we can use our funding in pretty creative ways if it's going to get that person where they need to be. So.
Same thing with transportation, which is a huge issue in Maine. We do the same thing if it's justified, and there's no other option. We can provide transportation when we can find it. Waterville, fortunately, there is a little bit of public transportation, but pay the first maybe 2 to 4 weeks, and then after that, they're expected to pick up. After they start getting a paycheck.
Thank you.
Real quick question, you mentioned the business startups. What about financially? I mean, do they work with a financial institution? How does that work?
You want me to go for it? So when Dick was explaining working with the SBDC, so a client will work with the Small Business Development Center and develop the business plan. If the business plan gets approved, then our clients have access of up to a certain amount of money that we will provide for startup. And I say this very cautiously because this is one of the myths about Voc Rehab, is that we have grant money available for business startup and that we just kind of give, you know, I want to sound tight, but there is a very specific process that we go through, so. Business plan gets approved, it makes sense. Well, let's say our client, I'll give two examples, but client number one is doing this business part-time. This is maybe a supplemental income for benefits that they have, and they don't want to get off benefits, that's fine, they want to do this part-time, get part-time benefits. Well, that client would be eligible for up to $5,000 in startup funding from VR. And what I want to say to that though is if we have a client who identifies that they only need $1,500 worth of tools and equipment to get their business running, that's what we're going to help with, right? We're not giving people $5,000 to go use it for whatever they want, right? What do you need to get this business up and running up to $5,000? And then, so client two, you know, they work with the SBDC, business plan is approved. And their business plan is set up where this is gonna be their career. This is their self-sufficient income is generated from this business. They're eligible for up to 10 of startup funding with help from us. Now, it's pretty common that we have clients where even how much we have is it's just not enough. You know, there might be a whole lot more needed in terms of startup funding. And we would work with the SBDC to figure out who are good options for that other funding, business loans, grant money, if possible. Fame. But yeah, I mean, we're gonna look at those places first. You know, we're always trying to look at comparable benefits before our own state money, right? But, yeah, so if, say, they need $7,000 and we can only help with up to 5, we're gonna actually be a resource for them to figure out where can we get this other amount of money so you can get on your feet, get going with business.
Thank you.
I'll just ask one more,
Yeah.
sorry. So I know you mentioned that, you know, to work with you, disability or barrier to employment. Can you give, I think, and in the past, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, in my own experience, one of the barriers to employment had been, you know, former addiction that they had overcome. Can you give some other examples of what you would consider barriers to employment that would allow somebody to
Yeah, I
work
think
with
that
you?
would be one right there. Yeah, addiction, incarceration, I would say. We have a person in our office who, her name's Kelly Barker, and she is our liaison for corrections. So she works with 3, I don't want to say local, but she works with like Maine State Prison, Bolduc, and there's one more, I'm drawing a blank on the main one, but Kelly will go in and she'll work with the residents that are within 90 days to release. And she will go in, she'll provide career counseling and figure out what's the plan for after release. How are you gonna get on your feet? How are you gonna communicate? Your cell phone, she's running into a lot of this, but clothing. Right, things change from the time you've been in there to the time you get out, so help with clothing, help with that first cell phone, help with connecting to the right people for housing. And then talk about how are we gonna maintain this, how are we gonna get the job? Right, so that would be a barrier. Kelly's in there early, working with folks and starting that process, so it's another example. Yeah, put me on the spot.
That's okay.
Well, I
I'm
think
just
you
thinking
used a
of
good example of the family who needed the daycare and that obviously that was, incarceration.
Yeah. Addiction.
felony on their record.
Yeah, we have
Was
a
that-
list of like like, I don't know the best way to say it, but like people who are open to working with felons and, exit incarcerated individuals.
Yeah, I mean, we have a lot of really good business relationships where I think it's gotten to the point with some of these relationships where we've worked so closely with them that they understand if we approach them about a client that we have in mind, that we've already done our homework and know we see the fit, we see the potential. And that, you know, if we sit down at the table and we talk about an opportunity for a client, you know, if we have any reservation, we're not gonna approach, we're gonna do the counseling and get to the point where we know it's okay to sit down and have this conversation. So we have folks that are willing to work with people with a criminal background, because, you know, I'd like to think that they know we've done that counseling due diligence to help get the person ready. So
What, so it's for folks that have a documented disability. So what if you have someone that they think they have a disability, but they don't have the insurance means to go through the proper test to be diagnosed? Is that something that you guys provide?
absolutely. Yeah, if a client comes to us, exactly like you said, I think that I have a disability. I'm not sure what it is. I have no prior assessment or anything. We can use our funding to do an initial, an assessment to determine eligibility. Yeah. It typically be like a psychological eval. or
Yeah.
something.
Well, thank you very much. I've been familiar with voc rehab for a while, but it's always good to sort of refresh and sort of catch up a little bit. And one of the real barriers in career is oftentimes not just the career, it's all the other stuff, right? And I think that's what you guys have always done a great job of providing those kind of supports.
So just ask one, how do they apply? How to post them?
So there's a couple different ways to apply. Yeah, she knows. So, the most common ways to apply, somebody can come into a career center, ask about voc rehab services, and they can get assistance with either career center staff or a VR counselor in-house to sit down and fill out a paper application, which we'll take with us, get processed, and then a counselor will reach out within a week or two of processing, you know, everything started. The other way that is pretty popular right now that we're really encouraging is for folks to apply online. You can go to the Maine.gov website. There'll be a tab for employment services. Click on that and you can see all kinds of language about vocational rehabilitation, career center services, and it was very user friendly. There's a link right there to fill out our online application. The reason we're pushing that so hard right now is because we are doing this new sort of program at VR called the intake unit. Traditionally, if somebody applied, their app would get entered, it would go to Kylie or Dick or whoever the counselor is going to be, and that counselor would start that whole process. And it takes a little while. I'm not afraid to say that. It can be a little bit slow moving for folks at the beginning. Well, the idea behind the intake unit is that there's an entire team put together right now that as soon as these online apps get entered, they're getting a call from the intake unit and they are rapidly engaging. We're getting them in, getting them started. Once they get through that eligibility and maybe that first plan and they've identified the barriers, they're getting transferred to a Dick or a Kylie who already has this picture painted. It can just start from day one with the counseling process, which is working very well. What I'll say is the intake unit is only serving online applications right now. I'm sure that will grow over time. So if you have people of interest and they apply online, they're going to work with the intake unit. Paper applications would still go traditionally through the individual counselor right from the start. So.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you for coming. So we had two people who snuck in, not really snuck in, but we've already introduced ourselves. We're not going to reintroduce ourselves, but why don't you just do a quick intro?
Sure. My name is Erin Benson. I'm the Executive Director of the Central Western Maine Workforce Development Board. I know a lot of people around the table, so.
Great, great. And David. Doug, excuse me.
No problem. I'm Doug Jervoy. I'm the Associate Dean of Student Success at Kennebec Valley Community College, and I oversee the academic supports and student supports on campus here. And I'm happy to be here and part of this conversation for sure. So I appreciate Sue inviting me to participate. Sorry I'm a little tardy today.
All right, thank you. So we're going to move to Mid-Maine Homeless Shelter. The floor is yours.
This is the first time I have been in a room in a while, Zoom or otherwise, where I virtually know nobody. So, I'm gonna start with this because I don't know that I wanna know what you wanna know about what we do. Cause I can talk, as Olivia will tell you, for a very long time. But I wanna know what it is that you wanna know, so I make sure that I get that in. So what is it that you want to know about homelessness, people experiencing homelessness, how that relates to Central Maine specifically, Maine?
So these are all career service people.
Yeah.
That's our focus. So I'd be curious to know, I guess I would talk a little bit about what are you doing to help the people at your shelter and transitioning them to employment? That's probably would be a big piece. And
Yeah,
a little bit about maybe who, what is sort of who's your demographic, maybe a little bit about who actually you're serving at this point in time.
yeah. Any other things you're curious about?
It would be helpful to know if there's anything you need from us. I know that from time to time, like I have business clothing that I donate to various organizations around, if that's something that would be helpful to you. If your consumers have barriers to employment that we can maybe help with, do they have reliable transportation, things like that.
Yeah, I'll echo that, challenges that you're facing.
Sure. All right, and if you have other questions, this is a friendly environment. Feel free to stop me at any time to ask anything that you want to know about. The reality is that the population that we serve has changed significantly between pre-pandemic and post-pandemic. Pre-pandemic, we were a 50+ bed, high barrier shelter that served a combination of adults, single adults, and families with children. That was a really bad way to operate a homeless shelter. It's actually really, really bad practice to try to blend these populations. So what we have done over the course of the pandemic is we have transitioned to a low barrier shelter serving single adults. Some of them are in relationships, but they're all adults in the shelter. What do we mean by low barrier? Well, we do not have sobriety tests. We do not require people to be under treatment for major mental illness. And we do not consider criminal convictions as a condition of entry into the shelter. So we literally serve everybody who is unhoused, who needs a place to go. One of the key things that has changed so that's for the shelter specifically, and I don't want to leave aside families and young adults because we serve everybody. We just serve them differently and in a much targeted approach. So in the shelter program, we have a year-round program that operates 365 days a year, 24 hours a day. In that shelter program, the key population transition we have observed is that as a high barrier shelter, a shelter that did sobriety tests and did consult the criminal convictions and did prevent people with certain convictions, specifically, if you're on a sex offender register or you have violent convictions, you are excluded from coming in, means that we have far fewer people who are employed. One of the key things that we have seen, in fact, is that it's almost reversed the number of people who are in employment with the number of people who are on SSI or SSDI. So we now have many more people who are probably not employment ready at all, right? They have a lot of physical limitations, major mental illness. And part of our work as a housing first provider is, and there's empirical evidence-based practice. The housing first is an evidence-based practice. It says you can't work on anything else until you get somebody stably housed. So that's really the goal for us for our shelter program, is to get people into stable housing first. And then we have a case management program that is open to the community. As long as you go, and we take referrals. The only caveat is, and it's main care reimbursed. So there's two caveats. One, has to be a main care recipient or eligible for main care. And two, they have to have been homeless within the last 90 days. they've been homeless within the last 90 days, we can pick them up on our case management service. And our case managers do a wonderful job, either post-housing or referrals from the community of doing everything that a good case manager does, which is work on health issues, work on behavioral health issues, work on employment, education, etc. So we've got that shelter population that is now very high need. We do work with people with substance use disorder. We do also serve people who are not ready to come into shelter. We believe that there's approximately somewhere between 40 and 50 unhoused folks living in tents currently, in particular along the Kennebec River. We do something called in-reach for those folks, so that even if we don't have a bed available for them, because typically our bed utilization is in the 95–96% region. We have the highest bed utilization of any shelter in the state. We still want to encourage folks who are unhoused to come in so we can provide showers, food, a place to hang out, a place to connect with services. Very often people are reluctant to come in until you build the trust and rapport with them, and then we can slowly over time encourage them to come in and accept a bed. The other thing that we do, and we are unique in the state of Maine, in fact, I think we're the only community in Maine who does this, so it's a point of pride for Northern Kennebec County, is we have 0 turnaways during the winter. For the last 2 years, anybody who presented at shelter for between the 1st of November and the 30th of April was not turned away. We would open the doors and provide shelter to them. It's a slightly different program. It's funded differently, so it doesn't provide the 24-hour access to services. So after breakfast, they would typically leave the shelter unless it's really inclement weather or very, very cold, then we would allow folks to stay. But that provides additional 20 beds to our shelter, and having 70 people experiencing homelessness, most of them high need, in a rather confined space in the middle of a Maine winter can get a little tight. And I'm sure y'all can appreciate that. But we are just around the corner from the Waterville Area Soup Kitchen. We also are able to help people access KB Cap transportation services and get folks to where they need to go. So that's the shelter program. It is currently very, very high need, and the focus is on housing. For some folks who are with us for a long time, and we now have what we call chronically homeless or long-term stayers. We never had them pre-pandemic because we were high barrier and we were turning people over, and we had a much more friendly, affordable housing market in Waterville. Our vacancy rate locally pre-pandemic was in the region of 6 to 8%. It's now below 5%, which basically, and Waterville specifically is probably trending towards 2 or 3%, which basically means there's no affordable housing. It's just much more difficult for people who are in the shelter for that long period of time to focus on things, but where people are working with case management and they do set as part of their housing stability plan a desire to get into employment, we certainly will connect them with those services. Our program director might be known to some of you because he comes from Voc Work Rehab, David Sobetsky. So he's very familiar with how to connect folks to those services. Pre-pandemic, we did it at a much more robust rate. It's just much more difficult with the population that we're currently serving. So we're really focused on the housing services. On our second floor, we run a young adult program called Youth Empowerment Supports. We have 11 units of permanent supportive housing. It comes with 40 hours of case management services every week. These are young adults who 18 to 24 is the target population. Many of them are leaving the care system or do not have supportive families of origin. It's very hard for young adults to get on the housing ladder, the rental ladder, if you don't have a parent who is willing to co-sign your first lease, for example. So we can provide them with that first lease and a safe environment. Many of them have complex needs, but they also have goals and aspirations, whether that's getting a driver's license, going to KVCC, and furthering their education, acquiring skills. So the case manager, her name is Kathy, she's wonderful at supporting young adults who need to transition from, again, a care environment or a very unsafe, unhealthy family of origin into adulthood. It's a really successful program, and if I had 20 more units, I could fill in with 20 more young adults. We've had 0 evictions in 5 years, so we're really proud of that statistic. We just work with them. Not to say that it's not easy to have a tenant who's a young adult who decides that they're going to run 5 different computers and various different other high-tech equipment and like jack up our utility bill and complain that the air conditioning isn't working. It's never gonna work in a unit that size with that many pieces of electronic operating. We've had examples where they tried to cook ramen in the shower. Don't ask me how that works, but it causes chaos. So you can see there's a big learning curve, steep learning curve. Yeah, it's called prison ramen. I had to Google it. It was crazy. But the point is, we're willing to work with the young adults and help them develop those skills of being a good tenant. And we define that as you got to pay the rent in full and on time. You got to maintain the unit and you can't be a nuisance. So there's a lot of working through those typical challenges that young adults who are it's almost like a dorm in a lot of ways. I'm not gonna lie. There are both really positive relationships and some challenging relationships. Many of them come out of our shelter program. It's not uncommon for us to get an 18, 19, or 20-year-old who's cycling through. And they're not, again, they're not really, they should not be in an adult shelter. They're very, very vulnerable in an adult shelter. Many of them are LGBTQ young adults. So again, we want to provide that safe environment, that safe, welcome, and inclusive environment, and make sure they have the supportive services that they need. We've had a number of graduates, if you will, who've gone on. Our most successful graduate went on to UMaine Farmington and now has a master's degree. We do have parenting young adults in our program. So 2 of our units are 1 bedroom, and they're able to come in either pregnant and or parenting. So that's a point of success. So we serve that population as well as our shelter population. And we have 1 unit of shelter. It's non-congregate shelter for young adults as well. So if we're waiting for a unit to open up and we can bring them upstairs to a particular unit. So they're again around a peer group. One of the things we know about young adults experiencing homelessness is that peer group supports are as important as service provider supports, that their developmental needs, they really need to be with other young adults in order to meet their social emotional needs. So we try to catch our young adults, our youngest adults, and bring them into the YES program, or at least even if they're downstairs in the shelter program while we're waiting for something to open up upstairs, we connect them with Kathy, our case manager upstairs, to make sure that they again have very targeted supports as opposed to general support. So we offer to everybody else. We also have a couple of other programs that might be useful for you all and the clients that you serve. We have a prevention and diversion program that is doing a very robust trade, I'm sad to say, because that means that we are doing a lot of work to keep people in the housing that they currently have or bounce them right immediately out of homelessness the moment that they lose a residency and get them right straight back into housing. So 2 programs there. The prevention and diversion is really about, we get a lot of calls, people call the shelter and they say, I'm gonna get evicted on Thursday. It's a Tuesday. Have you got a bed? Can I like reserve the bed? A, it doesn't work that way. But B, is there something that we can do? If you're still talking to your landlord, if your landlord will talk to us, is there something that we can do to rehabilitate that tenancy? If it's rental arrears, we paid a tremendous amount of money in rental arrears. If it's a CMP bill, and the landlord has no choice but to evict because that's a condition, you have to keep your utilities on. Very often we can pay those utility bills. Sometimes people are currently staying, they're couch surfing, they're staying with somebody. They found a unit, but they need security deposit. We can also find money for that. And then we can connect folks to other mainstream services to stabilize that housing long-term. So it's a lighter touch intervention than the shelter program. Shelter is the worst case scenario. We try to reserve it for the hardest to serve folks. These other programs are folks who just need a lighter touch, a little bit of support. They have that $400 emergency, that famous $400 emergency, and they don't know how to deal with it. Sometimes it's buying folks a bus ticket. One of our we call them housing positive conversations, helping people navigate from housing instability or homelessness back into shelter, utilizing natural supports. Our favorite story is an older young adult. And as our caseworkers are working with them, we're trying to identify natural supports, and it turns out they had a grandparent, a grandmother out in the Midwest that they hadn't talked to for a number of years, and so they thought that that bridge had been burned, and we're like, well, why don't you give us a try? Why don't we, let us try, just give us grandma's phone, Mima, like, just give us Mima's phone number, and we'll see what we can do. I got it, Mima was so excited to hear from this long lost grandchild. Her first question was, have they been eating enough, and how soon can you get them home? So that one was easy. That was just buying a bus ticket and getting that young person on the bus and back home. But very often, the barriers are not actual barriers, they're perceived barriers, and folks just need a little bit of support, that those housing positive conversations, and somebody to sort of get in pole position and help them navigate through those rocky waters, and we can get them back into housing stability. Our next program is something called rapid rehousing. This is one where we see a lot of success. So we see a lot of success in prevention and diversion with families. So I mentioned our shelter used to serve families. We think children, in particular households with children, belong in actual apartments and houses. They don't belong in a shelter, and it's an actual systems failure when we allow families to come into a shelter, like everything that can go wrong, and we just haven't done our jobs correctly. So how do we make sure that those families stay in housing? And so there's a couple of ways. The prevention and diversion, my favorite story there is about a single mom who had a CMP bill, and they were going to get evicted because it was like $1,500, you know, the pandemic era CMP bill that couldn't get paid. And she called looking for a shelter bed, you know, because that's what people do. They just call around looking for a shelter bed. And when we said, oh, look, well, I think we can pay that. And it's lightning fast. Like, we're not means testing people, right? People call up, we ask for some minimal information. And then, you know, like, call on a Monday, that bill's going to be paid by Thursday or Friday, because I sign checks on a Wednesday, right? Like, it's literally that fast, and doing a lot of landlord engagement. But she sent us a thank you letter afterwards, and this is exactly why we want to continue to do it. She never told her 8-year-old son how close they were to having to move out. They were literally within days. And she said she went into his room to tuck him in, and she plugged in the nightlight, which she hadn't been able to do for literally months. And just that small gift of being able to turn on a nightlight and know that her child had never experienced homelessness. It's important because we know that children who experience homelessness are exponentially more likely to experience homelessness as an adult. So if we want to end homelessness, we have to start ending childhood homelessness. And then in 20 years' time, we'll have far fewer people coming into shelters. So our final program is something called rapid rehousing. That one is where we do a lot of landlord engagement, and we're actually looking for the units before people come looking for us, and trying to be the preferred provider of tenants for area landlords. We've got some amazing landlords locally who want to work with us. What they're looking for, and it's really a housing first strategy, is they're willing to take a risk on people who have, you know, an eviction, or who have lost their housing for some reason, but they want to make sure that there's like a phone a friend, us, who will help stabilize and support that tenant as they transition into a new unit. So we do the landlord engagement. We've been operating this program since about March of this year. We've housed 25 households, majority of them have children. In 2022, our family program served 331 individuals, 125 of them were children. We never would have served that volume of folks in a shelter program. The beds just doesn't add up the same way. So it's a much more rational intervention for supporting people who are housing insecure than bringing folks into shelter. Those folks who are lighter touch, again, one of the things we do for rapid rehousing and prevention diversion is work on long-term self-sufficiency. So there's opportunities there to help make referrals where people want to, they're either in a position to improve their skills, take on further education, or look for a job. All the things that we're talking about before, are barriers to stable housing, absence of childcare, et cetera, transportation. So, our caseworkers do a tremendous job helping people connect to what I would refer to you all as those mainstream services, and make sure that they have long-term housing stability going forward that's really predicated on good sources of income and good stable jobs with benefits, et cetera. So I'll pause there and see if folks have any other questions for me.
I have one.
Yes, ma'am.
I got a phone call yesterday and the young lady said, my boyfriend and I are homeless and the shelter said they have no beds. We were told to call the chamber to get a voucher to stay at a hotel. I said, I'm sorry, sweetie, but we don't do that. And I said, have you called the other resources? And so I gave her some names and she said, okay, thank you. I mean, is that something that happens?
So it's not the 1st of November yet. So I always say there's a couple of things. One, very often people who are in crisis and experiencing trauma will tell you what they think you need to hear in order for them to access this critical resource that they need. And so I neither apologize for them or blame them, but very often they're not sharing correct information. It's more likely that we would have said, we don't have any beds available. So it's October. We don't have any beds available tonight. You should contact general assistance. We wouldn't refer people to the chamber. That doesn't seem to meet the smell test. But GA more than likely would have made a referral to GA, because GA does have an obligation to put unhoused people into motels. The challenge with GA, there's not a lot of hotel providers who are willing to take that GA voucher anymore. If you were to get that same message from the 1st of November to the 30th of April, I would say, no, that's not the message that people are going to get from us, because anybody who presents at the shelter, the doors will open for them and we will provide them safe shelter. But it is the case that we have less than 1,100 shelter beds. The actual number is 1,069 shelter beds in the entire state of Maine. And in January, which is at the lowest point of year, that's when we see the fewest people who are experiencing homelessness. We still have 4,200 people experiencing homelessness on any given night, and only 1,069 beds to meet those needs. So there is a dearth of shelter beds locally. It is always going to be difficult for people to access shelter at any time of year. And again, as I said, we are quite literally the only shelter in the state that for 2 years has made that promise. In the winter, nobody will be turned away. Every other shelter community turns people away all the time.
So we are a little crunched for time, so I'm gonna close. If there are other questions, I'll bet you could get a hold of you somehow.
You can either find me on the Mid-Maine Homeless Shelter website. You can find Olivia, but my email address is super easy. It's Katie, Katie, @shelterme.org.
All right. Thank you very much. That was very, very enlightening and very helpful to understand what's going on a little bit here. Thank you. Again, interest of time, we got a little late start today because didn't know where everybody was on Zoom, and we usually have a lot more than this, so we're a little slow, but
I can come back another time.
no,
'Cause I'm last.
no, we got it. We had, it's about 25 minutes apiece, and so
We're within it.
we'll do Educare, and you'll have till a little around 3, and then we have until 3:30, so we're good.
Okay,
No,
Thank you.
we're good. It's just that we're starting to get a little tight.
okay.
Usually I have about 10 or 15 minutes at the end for sort of wrap up and some other even networking, but we'll use our whole time. So
Sure.
go
And I
ahead.
don't know that I need 25 minutes, and I also don't need to do the presentation. Now that I get a vibe of how this is going, I can just chat with everybody.
That's fine.
Yeah, so I am here representing Educare Center Maine, which is part of KV-CAP, and I know that this group is very familiar with KV-CAP. So I've been tasked to stick kind of more specifically to Educare and Educare's Lab School Learning Hub. Again, kind of like getting the vibe of this conversation, I think I want to talk about sort of two separate reasons why I can see myself here at this table. One is a clientele that we have that desperately need to re-enter the workforce or complete their education. So for those of you who don't know, Educare Central Maine is located right here in Waterville. We're physically attached to the George J. Mitchell Elementary School. When we're fully enrolled, we have about 225 children. They can start as early as 6 weeks, and we keep them until 5 years until they're ready to transition into kindergarten. We are just one school within KVCAP. We have schools located in all of Northern Kennebec and all of Somerset County, but Educare Central Maine is the largest school, and we are part of a nationwide network. So Educare here in Waterville is one of 27 Educare schools across the country. We remain the only rural Educare school in the country. Typically, when families are living in poverty, they're living in big cities. So Educare schools are in Miami and LA and Chicago and Atlanta. But we were able to prove that rural poverty is just as, if not more hard to navigate as a family than it is living in the city, transportation being one of the big barriers, isolation, etc. So we're an early Head Start and Head Start program, which means 90% of the children and families we serve are coming to us from low-income homes living in poverty, right? So we provide comprehensive, holistic wraparound services, which means one, we're providing high quality education to the kids in our classroom by highly qualified teachers. But two, we are making sure that we are working with the whole family through a whole family approach to break the cycle of poverty, right? So we provide services within our school. We work with Kennebec Behavioral Health. We work with Child Developmental Services. Community Dental comes every 6 months to do full dental workups on all the kids. And that is because our families are working in jobs where they are losing their jobs when they have to bring their children to appointments. And we know that children who come from low-income homes statistically have higher levels of delays and disabilities. We have, probably close to 50% of our 200 children are either in the process of being diagnosed or have already been diagnosed with a delay or disability. Right, so we want to provide those services so our families can go to school and can go to work. We have families that are experiencing a lot of barriers to enter the workforce. When every family enrolls in our program, they are assigned a family service coordinator who are licensed social workers who are there for that purpose, right? To every family sets a goal, which is around breaking that cycle of poverty. I want to go back to school. I want to finish my high school diploma. I need a safe place to live. I don't have a working car, et cetera, et cetera. So they're connecting them to area resources so that they can be successful. We know childcare is a major barrier for everybody in the state of Maine right now who is looking for work, trying to maintain work, et cetera. And there's a difference between I can't find childcare, which is a problem, right? The number of childcare centers available and quality childcare, right? Because you might be able to find a place for your child to be all day. That does not necessarily mean that it's quality or safe. And as an adult, you are way less likely to be able to focus on your work and maintain a positive work record if you are worried about your child, right? So we provide that high quality care. So we have lots of families that have worked with every single one of the programs to do just that, right? To get themselves enrolled in school, find a good job where they can be successful so that they can hopefully break the cycle of poverty. So there's that. The second level and reason why I'm here is Educare's Lab School and Learning Hub, which I think is less known, right? We piloted our program about 3 years ago. We did a big fundraiser to kick off. So our Lab School and Learning Hub was started to address that need, right? There's a workforce crisis when it comes to early childhood. So it's not just families who need childcare to maintain their work. Early childcare centers and childcare centers in general cannot find right now qualified teachers to be in our programs. So a large number of childcare centers have recently closed, been shut down because they're not quality, right? We still hear today, we're having to close. We don't have enough staff, right? We don't have teachers. We have to close classrooms. We have a large center with about 60 staff, and even us closed their classroom just a couple months ago, only for 8 weeks, thank goodness. But due to the fact that we could not find quality staff to enter the early childhood workforce. We know that people are very interested in entering the early childhood workforce. A large number of those are our program parents, right? Who like, I don't know what I want to do. I love kids. I'm a good parent, right? I want to be a teacher. So the Lab School Learning Hub was developed in part to support that population of people who say, I think I would be a really great fit to become a teacher and work in early childhood. So this is our, what we call our lab school portion. So part of that is that Educare Central Maine as an Educare school is a very high quality center and environment. All of our classrooms have observation booths, two-way glass, in which you can see into the classrooms. They're also wired for sound so you can hear into classrooms. So we partner with our local tech centers in Waterville and Skowhegan to hopefully grab those high school students who, you know, are enrolled in their early childhood program, tech program, or not, and think they want to be, right? So we offer, you know, come to a tour, job shadowing, spend some time volunteering in our classroom, whether it's an hour, whether it's a month, whether it's a whole year, right? We are open to any student who wants to come in and learn about what it's like to work in early childhood. We also partner with all of our local colleges, KVCC being our biggest partner and cheerleader and support. But Thomas, Colby, UMA, UMF, Hussett, any college student. Again, we open our doors, not just at Educare, but all of KVCAP classrooms. Our doors are open for any student who needs to do field placements, who needs to do practicums. We are open to not only early childhood degrees, right? Especially with Colby, they don't typically offer an early childhood major, but their psychology majors come when they need to do research on children, right? Or their, you know, social services, like, you know, all of social work, you know, our doors are open to support any student who needs a high quality center to do their work to earn their degrees. We also offer our learning hub, which is to support, because people walk into Educare buildings who are already professionals in the field or not and say, you know, I want an Educare. How can I have an Educare? And the fact is, to build another Educare school, it's not virtually impossible, but very close to it, right? But you don't have to be an Educare school to be a high quality provider, right? So we offer professional development trainings to any practitioners, any programs, etc., who are looking to bump up their level of quality. We run at KVCAP, which you might be familiar with, what we call our early Head Start childcare partnerships. So those are like in-home childcares throughout our community. You know, like Aunt Jane's daycare down the road. Lot of smaller community childcares, Happy Days, that's just one of them. We have our staff who go into these childcare centers and in-home daycares to work with the staff and to work with the director. When they sign up for that, they are also eligible for a lot of our grant money, right? Because we're an Educare school, we have a lot of money that we can support. So whether it's you need to remodel your basement so that you meet licensing standards, right? So that you can be a quality childhood, we'll do that, right? We might help you sit down and do curriculum so you can do that. Or like right now, we have a 3-year partnership with the Boys and Girls Club in Gardner, who have been running a childcare center forever and ever, but they're not super high quality, right? They're not accredited. So we're working with them to provide coaching, to provide training on whatever topic that they need. So then again, they can become a high quality childcare center and hopefully, you know, offer more services and places that parents or anybody in the workforce can feel comfortable leaving their child so that they can, again, maintain a job, finish their degree, all of that stuff. A lot of people shy away from Educare in particular because they hear that our wait list is extremely extensive, and it is. However, if you are homeless, if you are a teen parent, if somebody is incarcerated, if the child is in DHS custody, you will bump right to the top of our list. Those are the families that we want to get in with our, into our care so that we can provide all of those supports. to Local resources. That was a very quick nutshell. I told you I could do it really quickly.
So how do people, I mean, how do we apply? How do you apply if somebody's interested? What's the
Yes,
process?
so there's many different ways. One, you can come right in, right? We have an enrollment specialist on site that will work with families because we have lots of options. We provide full day, full year childcare. We're open 11 hours a day. All year except major holidays and 1 week at Christmas, we're there. To be eligible for that program, parents need to be working, going to school, or volunteering for at least 30 hours. There's a cost to that, right? Most of our families obtain the childcare subsidy, but our enrollment specialist will work with all families to obtain us, to obtain that. That's why I asked, because a barrier to paying for childcare can be huge. If a family loses their job, we don't ever kick them out. We do a transitional period, which we, access other money to support those families. And again, connecting with whether it be school or the career center to find another job. So you can apply right there, come on in, also online at either educarecentralmaine.org or KVCAP. We have a universal application at KVCAP, which we moved to, and stop me if you already know this. But before it was very siloed. So a family might apply for LIHEAP, right? Because they need that, or might go to transportation and be served that way. But now we have a universal application. So if a family applies for LIHEAP for heating assistance, and we know that that's a family of 4, they're under the poverty guidelines, there's children, that application is automatically going to come to Educare, right? And then it's also going to go to WIC, and it's also going to go to every service that a family
Thank
needs.
God.
Yeah, that was major because
That's huge.
that's a barrier,
It's a
right?
huge barrier for some people.
And especially if you don't have transportation, sorry, you need to go to this building and then tell your story to them and then go tell your story to them. And
Well,
they just,
I'm filling it out on my phone and I gotta refill out every single field again.
yeah.
I'm throwing my
stop.
phone away when that happens.
They stop. We also have families within our program who speak not a word of English, except maybe hi. And we have translation services that we provide for any family. So we don't want that to be a barrier. Oh, probably one of the most important things why I'm here. So sorry about that. We have lots of positions available at our school, right? They start off in those sort of kind of non-payment positions, right? Where we'll host rehab, college students, right, to come in and do their work. Our very entry-level position is our substitute teacher position, which we are in desperate need of. 1, because we don't have enough teachers to staff our classrooms. And 2, even when we do, these teachers are at this point extremely burnt out. They need mental health days and can't take the time off that they need to take care of themselves because there's no one to take their place. We need subs desperately. The substitute position is flexible. Somebody can sub 1 day a week. You can sub for 4 hours a day. A lot of college students and high school students, we just changed it. You had to be 18 in order to be employed with us. Now, if you're a high school student, but with some experience, so say you're in the early childhood program, you can come work with us before you even receive your degree. As long as you're 18, but you don't have to have your degree yet if you're in high school. So we just changed that to hopefully get more. So for our substitute position, all you need to do is be 18 for a high school student, have a GED or high school diploma, and have some experience with children. You have to also interview, and that what we found is a barrier. So we received numerous applications from people who wanted to apply for our teacher assistant or even our teacher aide, which is our second entry-level position, but had no prior formal experience other than being a parent. We know that being a parent, right, means you probably have a lot of experience. However, right, on paper, you maybe never have been employed, never worked with children before. And so what we found is that we were screening out or turning away a large number of people and a large number of
Qualified
parents
people.
qualified
Really, yeah.
through life experience, but not that, you know, HR needs that formal experience. So we started a substitute training program. We run our substitute training program. Right now it's on demand, usually about 3 times a year. But I'm hoping to bump that up. This is a 2-day training, typically like 9 to 3, where we do like a quick nutshell. Want to give you some info about child development, KVCAP educators, and it's not just for educators, this is for, once you do the training, you're eligible to sub in any KVCAP school location. So we get people in classrooms volunteering, we give them some information, right? And so at the end of those 2 days, there's an optional 3rd day where you can interview right there, and become eligible. We're pulling in a lot of people this way. We always need subs because typically we hire our really good subs, because once you've, you know, worked a couple months and now you have the formal, right? You have a formal work experience, we're gonna hire you to be our teacher aide, which all you need is formal work experience. Right now, through some grant money, and we're just applying for more, but we're always searching for support, we're able to offer a stipend. So for anybody who attends our sub training for 2 days, they automatically get $100 check in the mail after, whether you choose to apply and stay with us or not, right? If you come for 2 days, we feed them lunch. We're working on trying to provide childcare during those 2 days because we know that's a barrier. We we do have the option even to provide some transportation assistance. If you need to take a taxi to get to us, we could probably do that. Again, we're trying to always seek out funding. So depending on if funding's available, we can do that. So, you know, and right now you get $100 for coming. If you are hired, you automatically receive another $200. You don't need to work for 6 months. You don't need even to work for a week. Once you're hired, we give them another $200, which is really to address some of those barriers. We have a pretty high standard work dress code, right? And we know that not everybody has a professional dress code. So maybe that $200 helps them do that. Maybe that $200 helps them, you know, put some gas in the tank so that they can get to work, or pays a friend for them to get here, or, you know, can pay a friend to watch their kiddos while they start work until they're eligible, you know, to get their children enrolled.
So substitute teacher, what's the pay for that?
Right now, our substitute teachers, I believe, not enough. No one in early childhood receives enough pay, not even the top of the scale. Don't quote me, but I want to say we're always revising our pay scale to be competitive. But it's probably, I think it's $14.75 for substitute aides.
So it's
And
above
again,
minimum.
It's above minimum. Yep, it's absolutely above minimum wage.
So more of a logistics question, at what point do they go through the background and fingerprinting? Is it prior to the training, and how long does that take
Yeah,
to get those?
It's not prior to the training. We do require, fingerprinting, extensive background checks. That is after an interview, after somebody has been successfully recommended for hire. And then our HR department will work to get them, you know, through all of those background checks. But we do talk about them first day of sub training so that it's not a surprise. And then again, able to have individual questions if people, you know, have questions about, am I eligible?
Right.
Hey, I was kind of, you know, DHS was involved a few years ago. Can I still be a teacher, etc.
Right. Good. Thank you.
So you have substitute teacher, $14.75 or whatever, then next level.
And then the next level is our teacher aide position that requires a high school diploma and some experience with working with children. And that one is $1 more, I believe, at this point, which is, I think they start at $15.25. Those positions, other than substitute, everything else is full-time. Right, so that's why that substitute position is really important to people who are just starting and might only have 3 days a week, or I can only work when my kids are in school, but I need to get them on and off a bus or drop and pick them up, etc. So yeah, teacher aide is the next level, and then we go up from there and tier all of our jobs. So teacher assistants, teacher assistant one needs to have at least 6 credits in early childhood, which isn't too much, like 2 classes, right? So if you have 2 classes in early childhood, and now our high school kids are coming out of, if they've gone to the tech program, they're coming out with that. And so they're automatically eligible for teacher assistant. Once you obtain your associate's degree, move to teacher 2, and all of these tiers, are increased pay, et cetera. And then we have teachers with bachelor's degrees, master's degrees, family support specialist. That's tiered as well. So if you're more interested in how do I support families, not necessarily work directly with children, anywhere from a credential to a degree can get you in the door as a family service coordinator. We also have maintenance, we have front desk office staff, we have a whole kitchen of chefs and assistant chefs and dishwashers. So there's lots of opportunities to join our team. For all of that.
I have a comment. If you've never been to Educare, it's an incredible, I mean, it is gorgeous. As a parent, I thought, God, I wish my kids had gone here. When I walked in to the lobby, I thought I was in the wrong place. I asked the woman behind the desk, I said, is this the daycare? She looked at me like I had 3 heads and she said, yeah. It looked like a lobby of a hotel room, of a hotel. It's absolutely beautiful. Go see it if you have a chance.
We
Sit on
we
the
had a
floors.
lot of meetings.
Sit on the floors, they're heated floors
Sit on the floor.
for our babies, because our babies and our teachers spend a lot of time on the floors, they are heated, yeah.
But this group, workforce practitioners, met over there for a couple of years. We met there, and then we moved to the Colby place downtown for a little bit.
Yeah.
Then that thing happened in 2020.
Yeah, and I mean, that's a good point, and thank you for bringing that up, Aaron. We do have pretty decent
Oh,
meeting spaces.
beautiful.
We used to be able to cater, right now, we're running short on staff, so we really can't cater, but you can bring your own food in. But we do want to work with outside groups, and even if your meeting has nothing to do with early childhood, if we can get people in the door, there are people in Waterville who don't even know we exist. And if they exist, they have no idea the extent of services we offer to kids and families. So yeah, have your meeting here if it means I get to give somebody a tour and walk them around and talk about our program, what we offer, and also what we need for support as well.
Questions from the hinterland up there and out there in Zoom world? Any questions? Anybody here?
Oh, we are running a sub-training this month, October 24th and 25th, with the optional day of the 26th. So if anybody is interested, educareschools.org has a Lab School and Learning Hub tab in which people can find out more information and register online to join that.
And maybe what we should do is maybe we should get Debbie, your website and the homeless website, and when we share we'll share the recording, and maybe we can include those websites in a follow-up email too. That'd probably be a good thing to do. As a former school counselor and a career center director at the community college, and now in my own private practice, the barriers are often transportation. I mean, and all the myriad of other things. And so it was incredible that we had 3 different groups today talk about the fact that it's not just career, it's all the other pieces. And sometimes that's what folks need is that, they don't have that family support or that extra $400. All of a sudden the car breaks down, and so career is complicated.
Yeah,
You know.
and we're not able to provide transportation for students unless any student who has a diagnosed delay in disability and is receiving their services at our school, then KVCAP transportation will pick them up and bring them home without parents needing to be a part of that.
Nice. Well, thank you. Thank you very much. You now have the
Last but
floor.
definitely not least.
We have till 3:30, so we'll go, it's all yours.
And I do have a PowerPoint, but probably I'll send it to you and you can send it out and I'll just speak. I don't know how much of you, most people don't have any idea what a workforce board does. Most people have never heard of it. Most people have never heard, anybody, well, there are some people that will. Are people familiar with WIOA? Thank God. Usually I'm in a room where people don't know anything about it. So basically a workforce board makes sure that the workforce system is working for the job seekers and employers of a particular region. So the board's job is to say, what's going on in the region? What's different about Central Western Maine, which encompasses Kennebec, Somerset, Franklin, Oxford, and Androscoggin. Took me a while to learn all of that. What's different about our area as opposed to coastal counties that takes care of the 6 counties that are in the coastal areas, or the Northeastern Workforce Development Board, the 5 counties in the northern half of the state? What's different about our area? What are the industries that are thriving? What are the ones that are dying? What are the ones that need people? And what people do they need? And all of this money that's coming, the infrastructure, the Inflation Reduction Act, CHIPS, all of this money that's coming in that's going to say, we can build things now. We can build housing, we can build whatever kind of infrastructure, broadband. Who's gonna build it? Who are the employees that are gonna do it? What do they need to know in order to do it? Can they get this training in order to understand what they need to know? And how are those job seekers going to find employers and employers going to find job seekers? And we're in a really tough situation in Maine. We're the oldest and whitest state in the nation. In the labor force participation rate, they usually look at the ages of 25 to 54 as the primary workforce labor participation rate, because that's when usually by 25 people are finished with their education, and usually by 54 and on, they're thinking about retirement. So usually people between 25 and 54 are mostly the ones who are in the workforce. Maine, it has a decreasing number. The largest number in the state are people 54 and above. And so people will say, why aren't the people in Maine working? You know, the people who, there are some people who are retiring because they've worked all their lives and the birth rate is lower. So Maine overall has a particular problem, but what is different about our area? Do we have a higher rate of people with disabilities? The American Community Survey has a demographic called disconnected youth. And those are youth that are 16 to 19 years of age that are either have graduated from high school or dropped out, but are not in the workforce. The Central Western Maine has a higher percentage of those youth than the state or the nation. So how are we going to address the needs in the Central Western Maine area? And how are we going to address the needs not only of the employers there, but also the job seekers? And how are we going to get the people on the sidelines, off the sidelines and back into the workforce? Because we need them. Maine needs them. So the workforce board really creates a plan to say what's going on in our region. How can we develop a plan that focuses on particular industries, that make sure that this whole system is working. And it's a difficult process because WIOA, the Workforce Innovation Act, the Workforce and Opportunity Act, it's been around. It's an employment grant. It's been around since the 30s. It's just been called something different. CETA, JTPA, WIOA, just different names. But basically, it's an employment grant to help people with barriers. And I do have a slide. Somebody was asking about what barriers were. I do have a slide of what all of the barriers are and the percentage that we serve. But how do we get people with barriers into employment? And barriers could be, yes, somebody with a disability, but also somebody who lives in poverty. Poverty affects the way we think, the way we speak, the way we react. And so it's definitely a barrier to employment. So how do we help people with barriers get into employment and get into a sustainable employment? So I was just, while you were talking, I use my calculator here all the time. Just for the heck of it, I said, okay, what's sustainable? At $17 an hour times 2,080 hours in a year equal 35,000, whatever. I timesed it by 75% because, you know, the government takes its 25%, and then I divided it by 12. So that's basically $2,200 a month to live off of. So rent, you know, maybe your heat's included in your rent, maybe not. Childcare, if you're going to school, training, you know, CMP, all of these things. What is the point where somebody can lead a sustainable life, that they're not going to need SNAP or any of those, you know, Medicare, not Medicare, that's what I'll need here, Maine Care. How do we get people into a path of employment that is going to be relevant to this area or Maine or wherever they want to live, and that is going to put them on a pathway that has upward mobility, a place that offers benefits? How are we going to help them? So the government, in its infinite wisdom, created what they called a workforce system. So WIOA has partners. So I think there are people sitting around this table that are one of the required partners. I'm sitting right next to a required partner. There are 4 core partners: WIOA 1B, which is, they have programs for adult dislocated worker and youth. Eastern Maine Development Corporation is the provider in this particular area for those programs. The Bureau of Employment Services is one of the 4 core providers. The Bureau of Rehab Services is one of the 4 core providers in adult education, but there are also others. And some report, so CSBG, that goes, it goes through the Department of Health and Human Services, but ends up mostly in all of the CAP agencies. TANF, anybody around here from TANF? They're a required partner. Job Corps is a required partner. There are, let me see, I'll pull them all up. Maine Community Colleges, a required partner. A4TD, Senior Community Services Employment Programs, a required partner. Pathstone, a required partner for the National Farm Worker Job Program. I mentioned Job Corps and the Bureau of Unemployment Compensation. These are all partners. We're all supposed to be this one system that works together. And it's very difficult when some people report to the Maine Department of Education, other people report to the Maine Department of Labor, other people report to the Maine Department of Health and Human Services. And so as a board, our job is to say, how do we make this system talk to each other, work together for the benefit of our employers and our job seekers? So what I think about all the times when I'm hearing people talk, like you said, that you help people with $200 for clothing and you pay them to go through this. Well, we owe a 1B. If they qualified for that, we could do a work experience or an OJT. They have money to pay for, you know, clothing. They have money for transportation. They have money for childcare. BES, they oversee CSSP, which is the competitive skills scholarship. Okay. We had a group of 6 Afghan refugees who wanted to do a CDL training. That's $8,100. That is a lot of money to spend on one individual. So we worked, so we owe a 1B worked with BES and CSSP, and they split the bill. There are opportunities to work, to partner with the Bureau of Rehab Services. I mean, I know you can pay for a work experience. So does we owe a 1B. You know, is there a way to share that cost so you have more money to spend with other people? You know, if there are training needs that need to be developed, how can the community colleges? And the community colleges, they all have a workforce division. And I know Elizabeth is here for KVCC, but all of the community colleges have this, that they can put together short-term training. I was just asking about the heat pump installation of, they both have you can get it in, I think yours is 6 weeks.
Ours is 1 week.
Oh, 1 week. Maybe it was CMCC that was 6 weeks, but, you know, the governor says she wants to put in 175,000 more heat pumps. And so who's gonna do that? Does anybody need extra workers? Do they have all of that they need? And are there certain installers out there, companies that need people? These are all of the things that come to my mind to say, okay, how can we get this business what they need by working with the community colleges, by working with WIOA 1B, potentially with Bureau of Rehab Services. So our job is to make sure that all of these required partners, number one, know they are partners. And number two, know how to work together, how to partner. And some people do naturally work together. But I think there's sometimes that we forget that we can partner with others, with all of these people who are the required partners. So that's really the job of the board. And I spend a lot of my time doing outreach, talking to businesses who, you know, have you ever thought about doing an apprenticeship? Have you ever, you know, can we do an OJT with you? Can you, you know, how can we help you? Do you need, you know, can we work with like the hospitals? Can we work to do a specific CNA training for you? And will you guarantee to at least anybody who completes it to at least interview them? Can you guarantee that? I mean, so there are so many opportunities to, if this workforce system was working as slick as it should, there really are opportunities to help people either get into sustainable employment or get on a pathway to sustainable employment so they can meet their own needs and meet the needs of their family. And I feel like that this is talk about a barrier. This is a barrier when we all report to different people to truly put together a system. But I'm gonna die on the hill of creating a system and ensuring that we all know what each other does and know how to refer and know how to build plans together. So that's basically what we do. And I've got, you know, I have an economic overview of our county, if anybody's interested in it. I've got an economic overview of each of the 5 counties that are different because they are different. There are higher rates of people who die from opioid in Oxford and Somerset County than in some of the others. There are higher rates of those disconnected youth that I was talking about, not so high in Franklin County, really high in Oxford County. So, I mean, the region has one look, but each of the counties have individual looks too. So those are reports that I'm happy to share with anybody who wants them. So that's really the function of the board, is to make sure to go back to that, you know, that simple concept of employers and job seekers, getting them together to make sure that the economy stays healthy and that people have a sustainable livelihood. So I'm
Well,
happy
so
to-
much of what you were talking about is why we created this particular group of people that meets 3 times a year, is that what do I need to know about? I mean, because there's tons of services out there, but Jim Peacock sitting in Vassboro, Maine may not know about every single one of those, right? And I may forget about some of them once, right? And so it's got to be this sort of constant, you know, people change, right? I mean, and so you get somebody is in that position and then all of a sudden a new person's in and they got to start. The intellectual thing has to start all over, you know,
Oh,
what
yeah.
are the resources out there? So it's a constant battle about where would I refer this individual? Because the individual on the street doesn't have a clue about this stuff. So you really got to tap into, you know, people like who are providing the services.
Businesses also don't have a clue.
No.
I mean, I talked to the director of KB Cog and he had never heard of WIOA. And think of all of the businesses that he touches. And there are also some misconceptions. Apprenticeship. There's a huge misconception of, oh, most of the paperwork is, oh God, too much. Well, yeah, that probably was the case 5 years ago. But now, gosh, Hannah Green from Educate Maine, she'll do all the paperwork for you. You know, so, you know, not only do people change, but, you know, programs change. And it's really, it's it's imperative that we really start thinking of, you know, who can I partner with? Who else can I bring in? Even if it's to, you know, save money. I'll spend some of my money and you spend some of yours. What are you gonna put in? What am I gonna put in? And so, and I will say that, the government in its infinite wisdom put these things in about you are the provider of last resort. Well, so what, do we all just stand around twiddling our thumbs, waiting for somebody to say, okay, I'll pay? Let's all throw something on the table, because oftentimes there are at least two people, two entities that can partner, but there are oftentimes more than two that can partner. TANF, they have a certain allotment for car repair. It was $1,000. We had a client that was also, I say we, I used to be in the service provider side of WIOA-1B. But the client needed a car repair of $1,500. TANF paid $1,000. WIOA-1B paid $500. So, because I can tell you that there's information out there that says the more money that you spend on an individual, the likelihood of their success grows exponentially. So how can we all pitch in with money, resources, you know, I mean, one of the case management, those kinds of things are critical, especially when you're dealing with somebody in recovery, somebody who's come out of incarceration. How do I get, you know, those social service entities to participate? How do we work together to make sure that somebody is successful? So there. I'm happy to answer a question if anybody has one. It's 3:19.
Questions? From afar or from near? Trying to find our next meeting here.
So I do have a question, and I think I already know the answer, but I'm gonna clarify it anyway. So, you had mentioned, you know, there's so many partners that we could be partnering with, and maybe we're able to partner with one group, you know, maybe like Elizabeth and I know each other, so we're like, okay, we can partner on this project together. But maybe we don't know about all the other potential people that we could be partnering on to help us with this project. Would that be something that we should be approaching your team for, to say, this is our situation?
Me and
can you
my
help us?
team, me.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I'd be happy. You know, because not that I know everything, but
I have Erin's
I
contacts and she's in my contacts.
I feel like, I know enough people that if people really start to say, okay, what do you need? What are you thinking about? What are you doing? What can you do? What can so-and-so do? And I'm happy to try and help, you know, connect people. Cause that's really, you know, my function too, is to make sure that this system is working together. And, yeah, I'm happy to, chat and figure out who you could partner with.
So earlier on, Erin, I think it was before you became director, there was a one-stop board. They were trying to kind of put together an ad hoc committee to kind of like pull all those resources together and kind of inventory all the opportunities. And then it just kind of like disappeared. I know it was like changes in leadership and stuff, and I know sometimes those ad hoc committees go away, but what is the best way for me to make sure you know exactly what, I mean, you said you stumbled on our website because our
No, you
marketing
sent me
flyer-
an email.
Yeah, our marketing flyer went out
Yeah,
to you and you
yeah.
saw it. Like, is that the best way for me to keep you informed?
Well, all of the required partners are invited to a one-stop partner meeting. It's a quarterly meeting. And in fact, it's happening tomorrow at 2:00, 2 to 3:30. It happens the third Wednesday of October, January, April, and July. And I'll have to check, but I'm pretty sure you're on our list
I
of
was gonna say, I don't
invitees.
have that. Look on my calendar.
Okay, I'll double check when I get back.
Oh, yeah, I do have it on my calendar for tomorrow.
There you
It's been a
go.
while since I've seen it there, though. That's so funny. I'll
Well,
be there.
What happened was that's another thing that's required by WIOA, that we have this one-stop operator that runs a one-stop partnership. And, you know, so we meet quarterly. If they were doing it monthly and sometimes, I don't know, it was confusing.
Yes.
So, so we started them back up. We started in September, so this will be our third one, I think. So, yeah, we have to invite all of the required partners. But, you know, if somebody shows the least amount of interest, I'm willing to send a calendar invite to join us. And it's an opportunity to hear what other people are doing. And it sometimes it gives you an idea of, oh, I didn't know you were doing that. How, and have side conversations, you know, that's the way that some information can be disseminated. And oftentimes we'll have presentations, like, I don't know how many of you are familiar with what the state is doing around the 10-year plan that the governor, they wrote, in 2019. They're taking a look at, they're updating it. They've updated it to see where they've come so far. And they're doing these listening sessions around the state to see where they're, you know, where we need to go. And that's also happening tomorrow at KV Cog in Fairfield at 9 o'clock. So I encourage you, if you haven't been to a listening session, but, you know, to see, you know, that again is, you know, potentially part of that one-stop partners. We sent information to everybody about that. So just trying to, it's a way that, that we try and get all of these partners together so they can stay connected.
And I will say, for all of you looking for training for your clients, we have so much going on free throughout the community college system. A couple of people have mentioned CDL and the cost of that. We've been delivering it free. We've trained 80 people so far. We have training for 40 more, and I'm working on an application for another round so we can try to get another 60 in. But we're partnered with Marana Cook High School, and we're working on a partnership. I'm meeting Friday with someone for Class A. Those are all Class B. So, I mean, it's significant, the amount of money that is happening, you know, and I know it's coming to an end at the end, you know, mid-2025 for us, but there's also employer supported trainings through Harold Alphone Foundation. There's just a lot of money. So if you have someone in need of training or wants to job shadow or kind of get a feel for something and give it a try, I mean, please let us know. We would love to support these folks.
There's a lot of free training going on. Healthcare for me.
Yeah, the tuition remission program.
Just as at some point the spigot's gonna shut off, but in the meantime, get all you can.
Awesome. Well, thank you all very much. Our next meeting is Tuesday, January 30th, and it's the 8:30 to 10:30 time. So what we flip flop every other one. We do a morning and an afternoon. We think there are people that can come that can't in the afternoon and in the morning. And we've tried Wednesdays and Tuesdays, and I don't think it matters, to be honest with you. I think you either make it or you don't, kind of thing. But it's going to be Tuesday, January 30th, 8:30 to 10:30.
Here.
We'll do it at this point. The steering committee is number wise. If we had bigger numbers, we could go back to Educare, but
You don't need big numbers to come to Educare.
but this is pretty convenient for us. I mean, it's downtown Waterville. Educare has been wonderful, and we can certainly talk about that as a steering committee. But as the world has begun to open up, you're seeing kind of the results of it. I mean, obviously more hybrid stuff, but we'll see. But I'm curious, are there any specific businesses that anybody would like to see, or any career service providers that you'd like to see, or if you would like to present to us? I know, like adult ed we've been doing this long enough. We're actually going back and going to when we've had Educare or KVCAP present. We've had people present 5 or 6 years ago, but lots has changed, right?
Jim, I'm always interested, and I think you may have done this topic a while back, if I'm not mistaken, but on reentry folks, whether it's the prison population, people who are, you know, entering the workforce after addiction and things like that. Because I'm always wondering at KV, how do we reach those populations and how do we deliver training? It's interesting. We've tried we've done some stuff with the Skowhegan jail, but we tried kind of connecting with Warren and working with the Baltic facility, but you're limited in your access and what you can bring in terms of technology. A lot of things live within these learning management systems that are, so I'm wondering, how do we connect with those populations and serve them?
So what we've been doing, we're literally going on site in probation and parole. We've been there for, I don't know, probably 3 or 4 months now. So we're at Augusta, Waterville, and Skowhegan. And we have tremendous success. The staff that are going there, I say success, meaning we're getting folks working. You know, I mean, we're knowing that there's transportation barriers, they have a lot of barriers. We go on our job link, we do a job search for those local, you know, things that are, several are residents at the shelter. So we're just doing walking distance to downtown, you know, jobs that are open, but just, you know, knowing of these referral sources to, you know, if they show a glimmer of interest and, you know, a training opportunity or whatever, doing that, but we're on site. And we have a good relationship with the probation officers. Again, this is just giving us our opportunity through all of this money that we've received to add staff to get out into the field more and do this work.
That's what we lack is staff, but
and that's it. So I have people like, I want to talk to you, get back into educare. We were there before COVID, you know, so all these things. I'm not saying no really to anything, because if it's going to get folks working, if we're going to help our partners and our employers, then let's not try it, you know.
So to your point, Elizabeth, I mean, we could have the Career Center, we've had you speak a number of times, but you could come in maybe next time and talk specifically about that population. Possibly. I mean, I don't know. Is there somebody else?
I was gonna say,
Or is there somebody else that you?
no, I mean, I don't know, because I don't know where the connection is, you know, and I don't know, like, what are the trainings? I mean, obviously, we want to train them in meaningful career opportunities, you know, because we don't really give second chances in our communities. They're limited in what they can do for jobs, unfortunately, and so we have to approach it from that standpoint too.
Yeah.
What about having some of those parole officers come in?
I have someone I can connect you to. So I have someone who works in my program, Karen Morin. She's our Kennebec County Career Specialist. But her background is in specifically with the Kennebec County Jail, working with the CARE program, and that's all about reentry. So I can connect you with her.
Yeah,
to
that'd be
see.
great.
Well,
Like, she's not there anymore, but she might be able to at least connect you with people that are there now.
Yeah, but, and then we would like to have them speak here in January, possibly.
I mean, I was gonna say, so in adult ed, I recommend Karen and Akil. Karen is our Kennebec County Career Navigator, and Akil is our multilingual community navigator. Really working with the folks that are being placed here from some of the resettlement agencies. So both of them come with a real wealth of information. Karen has been a service provider in Kennebec County for decades, and has a lot of contacts. And then Akil comes from the Portland area, doing a lot of work with case management with multilinguals down there.
So those sound like, if you can give my email.
Yeah.
Just send me
Another-
their names, you know, so again, we're always looking for names of people, other options, I'm sorry.
No, I was gonna say another topic of interest for me would be our New Mainer population. I know capital area, New Mainers is, you know, they're working with these folks, and given the overpopulation right now in Portland, they're gonna start moving north
And
and
there's just a, you know, there's a resettlement here coming.
absolutely.
Well, and you were
Absolutely.
just telling me about, you're seeing the results of that in adult
Yeah.
ed. you know.
Yep.
There's also a session, where people can, you know, ask questions and give their, opinions about, they're gonna open a new office, an office of new Americans, the governor. So I'm attending something on Friday. So it's just an opportunity for people to give feedback about what should this office of new Americans do, and, you know.
Yeah, they have to deliver a thing to the governor by the beginning of January. So I think there's like 3 survey questions. Pretty easy survey questions.
Well, and, you know, these are social trends that are going on, right? And I think that's one of the reasons we wanted the homeless shelter in, is to sort of, there's a huge issue with the homeless here everywhere, but in Waterville is our issue, and so we wanted to do that. So maybe the New Mainers is another great idea for us to look at bringing somebody in. So steering committee meets, we meet in December, and so feel free to shoot me or anyone on the committee here suggestions for people, but thank you all for coming, and and have a great day, and hopefully we'll see you in January 30th.
Sounds great. Take care. Happy holidays, everybody. A little early.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Okay, Halloween's in 2 weeks.
That's right. In my house, that's a holiday.
So Debbie, I would just end that meeting and then the recording will drop down to your. Oh, no, you had it. Wait, no, up to your right. No, it's on your screen right now. Don't click there.
Huh?
Nope, don't click there. Nope, nope, not there.
Is
Lift
around
your-
the
lift
black.
your cursor up.
Direction is super
Lift your
helpful.
cursor.
Not there, not there, not there.
Let's- You have, it.
Bring your mouse just
I
off
have,
Move your
I
mouse
have a
up.
happy figure.
move your mouse up.
off the
There you go.
taskbar.
See the end? There's end on the right.
Red button.
Red button on the end. It disappears every time you. there
Yep,
you-
now bring your mouse down.
There you go.
It's
Go
done.
back over to the black spot, yeah,
go.
where
Oh,
our
there it
videos
is.
are, yeah.
So then.
Sorry, guys.
Morning one.
We all learned
If you're
it
not,
some
yeah, I
point.
can say if you're not used to
Good to
Zoom,
see you
then
again.